Good afternoon, St. Joseph School families. Happy Friday. Well, I've had a couple of examples in the last couple of weeks that show what happens when you have moments that you'll remember the rest of your life, because we had two major life events last week. I would say one of them a big life story and one of them a big news story that really shifted the week that I will always remember where I was. One of them happened last week on Tuesday when our fourth child and first daughter was born. And so I went into last week with a really big to-do list and all sorts of things to get done. And on Monday evening, as I'm finishing up here, it became very clear to us that our daughter was going to be born the next day. And so my entire week changed. My to-do list basically got set aside for the week. Any appointments that I had were either canceled or pushed back a week or handled by Mrs. LaMusca, Mrs. Roble, or someone else on staff. And thank you very much for doing that for me. But my entire week changed on that. And the good news is we had a healthy daughter born, Stella, on Tuesday evening. And I'll always remember where I was in the hospital when she was born to celebrate that with my wife and to bring her home last week to my family. But again, the entire week changed once that news happened, and it changed everything that I did for the whole rest of the week. Now, on Thursday, I was actually sitting in the hospital with my wife and daughter, waiting to be discharged from the hospital, and we're watching the news, and we saw white smoke appear on the corner of the screen. And then that started the process of watching really intently for the next hour when the first American Pope, Pope Leo XIV, was named Pope. Now, I will always remember exactly where I was when the first American Pope was named because of that moment. But I have to admit, there's a part of me that was really jealous for everybody back here celebrating at school and all the celebrations and all the watching and the cheers that were happening inside our school building. I'll always be grateful for where I was, but man, there's a part of me that kind of wishes I was back at school. So these were two very different events, one a life event, one a news event, that you remember where you were, and I will remember them for the rest of my life. You know, this is something that happens in life, and a big part of school is to help set those priorities for our kids so that we make a big priority when something happens or our plans change. For instance, we as teachers need to use the teachable moment to talk to kids about why this is so important and why this is groundbreaking, or this is an event that needs to pause everything that we're doing. So with the news story, for instance, I remember exactly where I was on September 11th, 2001, where we went from having a day of college to having pretty much all of our classes changed so that everybody could be following the news and keeping up with it. It changed the trajectory of the rest of our week. Sometimes, in the midst of a news event, we have to do that. I'm sure there were a number of students that were here last Thursday when Pope Leo was being named, and we were going through finding out who he was and watching TV news coverage that thought, hey, shouldn't we be learning math right now, or maybe some history or something like that? But it is the job of the school to say, this is big news, this is important, and we should now build our day around this. You know, the same thing happens with life events. Sometimes students or families feel bad about missing school for a funeral or something like that happens because they have to be with family and miss it. And the reality is we need to interrupt school or interrupt work sometimes for those big life events that take great importance. In fact, it's a big work of school to say this does take precedence, or this is a thing that we need to make a higher priority, and school will still be there when we return. So I'm grateful that school is still here as I return this week. I thank everybody for the support, all the well wishes that we've received from my family. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.